And so first, before we begin, I would just like to extend another, I would just like to voice thanks again to Miss Mariba Mack. She is wonderful. She's a wonderful partner in helping get out the word about this great program. And also all of our partners at DANTES, including Emily and Aaron, who are assisting with the webinar today. There is a wealth of knowledge at DANTES to help service members in all aspects of both their military training and academic training, both while they're in service and thereafter. So thank you guys for all that you do. So that said, let's go ahead and get started. We'd like to provide a deep dive into the online academic skills course and also provide a couple of use cases for this course that folks may not have thought about before. So one of the things that's important is we're looking at courseware and programs. It doesn't have to be an all or nothing approach. There are bases and installations that use this program for, just for different parts of their own academic training, and we'd like to show you that. So we'll go ahead and get started here. Today's agenda, we're going to give an overview of OASC, how OASC builds academic preparedness among service members. As I mentioned before, some use cases of OASC among branches of service, how to get started. Hopefully that we've provided some use cases that pique your interest if you haven't already used the program before, and then also some quick Q&A. Next slide, please. Okay, so what can you expect this hour? We are going to tell you about OASC and why it's important, how it works, how effective it is, how you can use OASC, your base or installations, and then really what can you bring back to your community? So basically resources that you can provide on site that will help service members in achieving their career and academic goals. Next slide. So what is OASC? If you are completely new to this program, OASC stands for Online Academic Skills Course. So it's designed to build academic skills. We'll get more in depth about that, like what is the scope there, the depth and breadth. It is free to all active military, their families, and DoD civilians. So we get a lot of questions about, can Army Reserve use this? Can National Guard use this? Yes, any active military is, it is free for them to use. It's online asynchronous courseware that was designed intentionally so that people can use this anywhere, anytime. We have an app for downrange use. So this is really something that folks can take with them before they deploy downrange. We also have live on-demand tutoring for those who need a little bit more of a personal touch. And that's probably all of us, right? We all need to talk to somebody live on the other end of the computer now and then to ask questions. And then one thing that has been very successful in the past couple of years is the addition of my academic predictor. So it gauges an AFCT score, among other things. The purpose of the program, and I like to read this and reiterate that, is to provide an academic skills program which allows personnel to upgrade their reading, writing, computation, and communication abilities in support of academic skills and military occupations and careers. Academic skills programs may include English as a second language and basic science. So we always want to look back to our purpose and see, if we start to, get a little beyond scope, rein it back in. Next slide. And then the other thing that's very important to us is that we're following policy direction, and that we're not just, creating this to create something. What are the reasons for creating it? We have our purpose, and we also have our direction from directly from policy. So we want to enable flexibility across service branches for learning, expand access to instruction. We want to incorporate collaboration as a support to reduce attrition. We're providing additional cognitive, metacognitive, and non-cognitive skill development. So we're not just talking about the actual cognitive skill development, meaning we're not just teaching math facts and grammar rules, but also things about things that are metacognitive in terms of building persistence, grit, thinking about thinking, making plans, thinking about how to pivot when a plan doesn't go as it should, and applying all of those things to the process of learning. We also want to integrate AST throughout a service member's military life cycle so that they can come back to it when they need it. We all need a little help now and then in refreshing our skills. So at some point in a career cycle, someone might need help with remembering all those great geometry equations. And then they might need to come back to that later on. And that's what we're here for. And then also a way to evaluate progress. So the policy is to monitor and evaluate service member skills related to measurable program outcomes. So ASVAB, AFCT, GT, AFQT, and college level course placement. So, programs without measurement, are less effective. And so we have implemented measures of success within the program to help us measure effectiveness for both the program and for service members. I'm going to pause here. Did someone have a question? If not, we can move on to the next slide.
Josh Whiting, did you have a question? We can bring you off of mute if you'd like to speak. We can see your hand is up. Oh, it's been put down. I think that was a fluke, Elizabeth.
Okay, all right. Well, I'm happy to pause for questions as we go through the presentation, so don't be shy. We'll also have time at the end for a Q&A, so if folks feel more comfortable waiting until then, that is fine as well. So how is OASC built? So we use custom paths and adaptive technology to increase value and efficiency. And essentially what that means is that we map, and we can move to the next slide here, we map learning objectives with the user journey. So what happens is a service member registers for the course, they take a pre-assessment, which is essentially a diagnostic test. And that diagnostic test is able to, that diagnostic test is able to tell a service member, today, as of today, if you took the AFCT or the ASVAB, what would your scores be? And not just the AFQT, but also the sub-scores as well. So a lot of folks are concerned about that GT score in the Army, so we're able to provide those sub-scores. From there, our courseware maps the assessment to learning objectives, and prescribed lessons are released for each individual student. So based on a student's strengths and weaknesses, the program prescribes different lessons for students to shore up their areas of deficiency. And then if they're already, getting flying colors in certain academic areas, they don't need to spend additional time learning what they already know. And then from there, we have a student take a post-assessment so we can measure levels of progress. And then one thing that we put into the course is that it's really important for service members to show that they have achieved a certain level of proficiency. Different service branches are actually using that certificate in different ways, and I'll get to that kind of when we talk to our use cases. But we do provide an option for service members to receive a certificate that they can use, and they can take that back to their their ESO or their commanding officer for different use cases. Next slide. Okay, and this kind of just shows how we map learning objectives to particular lessons. So, for example, in mathematics knowledge, we have specific learning objectives that a user should be able to compute. And if they are able to meet those learning objectives, then they don't need to have all these various lessons within their courseware. And then if they do meet, if they don't meet the objectives, they'll have lessons. If they do meet the objectives, they don't have to go through those lesson plans. Next slide. This is an example of one of the lessons that video lessons that we have in our course. I'm going to ask Emily to try and click on this and see if we can get the tech to work. If not, we'll move past it. Okay, looks like it is not working, so we will just move forward, but you can see that this is an example of one of the interactive lessons that we have. We try to make things engaging. We have whiteboard videos. We have videos with instructors. We have a whole variety of things to help make the learning process engaging. So we can just move to the next slide. Okay, so I paused. I did not answer a question that came up in the chat because I knew that I was going to get to it right here. So I believe we had questions about, does this actually work? And do we have evidence that this is, mapped to the actual exam? So let's go to the next slide here. Okay, so these are some of the results that we have seen within the program. And you can see that on all of these different subtests, word knowledge, assembling objects, et cetera, we have, you can see an initial score and then a final score for service members. And this data is since our last test calibration from June 2022. The subject improvements are pretty phenomenal. Now, some folks would probably be skeptical of this data, and I think that that would be wise. But I'm here to tell you that one of the reasons why we see so much progress is because this data represents individuals who have actually gone through the whole program, soup to nuts. So these are folks who have, come through the course, taken that pre-assessment, gotten all of their lessons, and have been able to, go through the course to the end. So if we were to show these results for everyone who's taken a pre-assessment, it's probably be much lower. But what that tells us is that we know that the students that persist and the students who actually go through the whole program are showing a holistic improvement across the board. And that to me is not surprising because, it's intuitive that people that put in the work are going to see the most results from that. In relation to how this maps to the actual AFCT, what Peterson's does is we use data from our own cohort of students, so both within the military and outside, and we map this to the Pay 97 study that was done with ASVAB to use the to make sure that our standard deviations are not outside the norm. And if we have those that are outside the norm, you know, we're going to expect one or two outliers here and there. But if we have a certain cohort that's outside the norm, we throw out that data when we're renorming to make sure that it's as close as possible. We have also done studies in partnership with the Army to, you know, basically test our material against, you know, other sources. And we found that it has been pretty close to the real thing. The one, you know, the one unknown is that, of course, we're not going to be given the actual test questions. So we can't, you know, we can't actually provide, you know, a standard deviation on the question basis because we don't have those. Nobody has those except the actual test maker. Another question that we have that just came in is, do you have an average time the service member is taking to complete the entire program? So I'm going to give you a number. Everybody wants that actual number. I'm going to give it to you, but I need to give you a caveat here, is that, you know, this is an asynchronous course. So people can take it at their own time. So it might take one service member 7 days and they're just plowing through the material. It might take another service member 3 months because they're doing a half an hour every 3 days. It also depends on how much the service member needs to refresh and improve upon their skills. But since I promised you a number, the number that that we usually see is the average is about 32 days. So when you have service members coming to you and asking, like, how long is this going to take? We know that people want a number. And so feel free to give them that number of 32 days, but also with the caveat that, you know, they need to be in the courseware actively trying to work on their academic skill improvement. And 32 days, let's see, with how many dedicated hours? I don't have a specific answer to that, but I would recommend at least an hour a day. Again, this is going to vary because of how much remediation is prescribed for each individual service member within the course. We also had a question from Dr. Hardy. What percentage of those using OASC complete the entire program? That is a good question. I don't have the actual data to speak to that today, but I'm happy to look into that and get back to you. Let's see.
Can you hear me? I'm not sure if you can hear me.
Yes.
Okay, one more question. So when I asked the original question about MAP providing accurate data to the soldiers, so I'm more looking at post AFCT. So do we know that once they finish the OS program and now they have a revised indicator, how does that compare with when they actually take the AFCT and compared to the results that the predictor is telling them?
Right. We have one study that shows, and it's a very small sample set that we have with the Army that shows it's pretty darn close. However, those of us who work with data are skeptical of small sample sizes. The other thing that from the Peterson's end that we do not have access to is we provide this program to service members, and once they complete the program, that is sort of where we have we've lost contact with them. We are hoping to work with service branches so that we would be able to get more information from service members after they complete the program and after they take the AFCT to, again, help, sort of map that data and make sure that things are as accurate as possible. So one of the things that I am recommending to ESOs and counselors is, if you have service members that would be willing to participate in the study, we would love that. We would need to, this would need to be on a voluntary basis by service members because they would be providing, PII information. But we have had one, since we've had a couple of conferences recently, we have had a couple of ESOs reach out and say, yes, I can put this out to my service members to see if they'd be willing to participate. And we would just love that because, from looking at the data scientifically, we'd love to know more. Unfortunately, as a company, we just don't have access to that. Does that answer your question?
It does. And I guess just one more clarifying point here is do they in fact get a revised predictor after they complete the program? So they do the one initial, do they get a post predictor, if you will?
Yes, sir. So they get scores that are aligned to the AFC after both the pre-assessment and the post-assessment, so that we can measure improvement, and also, so that we can see if the service member is ready to sit for the exam. One of the questions that we get a lot from service members is they will take the initial pre-assessment and they won't get the score that they want, and they'll say, hey, can I take it again? And our answer is no. And the reason is not that we're trying to be mean or harsh, but the whole point of taking the pre-assessment is that it's providing the academic remediation needed so that they can take the post-assessment and see improvement in their score. So when a service member takes that pre-assessment, they may be disappointed in their score. And that is okay from the standpoint that, if they were already doing swimmingly, they probably wouldn't need to be, remediating skills on day one. So we like to tell folks that, again, don't worry, this is your initial score. And once you go through the courseware, you're going to take this again. And so we can see this improvement. So yes, every time when they take the pre-assessment and when they take the post-assessment, they will receive scores. Okay, I've got a couple more questions in the chat here. Cassie, did you have a question? Okay. All right, let's move forward to the next slide. Okay, so we also wanted to ask service members, how did they feel about this course? And we can see that this is a survey or I should say a feedback form that's given before they take the post-assessment. So these are for folks that have, worked through the program. And as you can see, people feel like they overwhelmingly agree that this helped them meet their goals. Next slide. So here's a few use cases that we wanted to present to you because this was designed to use, among all service branches. Service branches are using it differently, and that's okay. And then there are some even bases or installations that are using it in a very discrete way. And again, that's okay. So we're going to provide a few use cases just to give you some ideas of how the program might be used. Okay, oh, and Ray has a question. Ray, go ahead and unmute if you can, and I'd be happy to take your question before we dive into the use cases here. Okay, let's move ahead. All right. Mariba, would you like to go through some of these use cases, or?
Oh, sure.
Okay.
Sure. I'd be happy to. I get excited about these. So we have had the opportunity this year to work with the program in ways in which we necessarily hadn't in the past, but with the flexibility of AST, it can be applied in any training environment. So if you have friends or instructor friends across the services, and they are looking to get their students who are not classed up prepared for class, this might be a useful tool for those environments. And the reason I say that is because it is being used in that way at several installations already. So at Fort Jackson, the Army recognized a problem there, where they do Army recruiting. And the issue was that they were finding that recruiting and enlisting qualified, it's a continual challenge, all branches in all geographic areas. Not sure if you all are aware of that, but the numbers are scarily low. And so the solution that they decided upon at Fort Jackson was to go ahead and allow their service members to use the online academic skills course to help increase their qualification scores for the ASVAB and the AFCT. And so the goal is they wanted more provisional recruits to be able to make it to full enlistment. So a provisional recruit is they're already in because they have their CAT cards. That's the only way you can access the program, but they're trying to study up to get fully qualified to get all the way through the enlistment process. Back in the day, we used to call it something like delayed entry program, depending on which branch you are in. And so that's the use that they are implementing there at Fort Jackson. And you can see the results and see how those numbers have grown just over the course of one fiscal year, from 1,000 up to 11,780. So it's been a useful tool there. We're continuing to follow them to see how the program grows and develops in that capacity, and also trying to introduce it around to other Army recruiting processing bases, and to people that just have junior recruits who are not necessarily all the way classed up or through their enlistment have reached full enlistment status. But this is a useful tool to get them on track. And one thing that going through the program does, if nothing, is it allows our service members to learn how to study and to sharpen up on some of those old skills that have been dormant. Oh, and you have to keep it in mind that we're dealing with recruits who are now entering, who've experienced a huge delay in school back when the country was shut down during COVID. So those people are now enlisting. That's our future. And so any tool that we can implement to help them close those learning gaps, we want to capitalize on that. Next slide, please. Also, sort of like the Army, at the Navy Recruiting Center at the Great Lakes, they are using the tool in the same way for their provisional troops who are not already in. The problem was that they were having the same issue with recruiting and trying to close those gaps. They're allowing service members who didn't come in 100% strong. They're allowing them an opportunity to study up, learn how to study, and to sit through a program that will increase their confidence and hopefully allow them the capability to advance to the next stage of their career. And so the integration of that program is in its very infancy stage. We only started that late last year. And so we're looking for, we're following them closely to see how successful it is in that capacity. But with the current recruiting problems, we do expect for it to grow very closely like the Army did. Next slide, please. And so our population of troops in the Marines, they are not allowed to receive tuition assistance until they have completed the online academic skills course to demonstrate that they're committed to an education program and to show, that they are ready to take on the challenge of college. So they use it as a tuition assistance checkpoint for the Marine Corps. And the result of that is a 62% growth in certificates year over year. So every year they're just getting stronger by their service members completing this program and walking away with certificates of success. Then they can apply these skill sets to other areas of their careers. Next slide, please. Elizabeth, I love the way you do this part. You want to do it?
Okay. Sure, no problem. And just one of the other things that I wanted to mention about those use cases that we showed is that in all of those use cases, the installation or the branch is, not necessarily using the whole program, but they're using part of it. So, for the Army, I know that we've probably got a lot of the Army folks on here today, that you guys love your in-person training. You have your BSEP program, and it's, you've got it down in terms of the steps that folks need to do to go through the training. And in those situations, maybe there are bases or installations that are just using OASC for that initial pre-assessment to get those scores. And that's okay. We can use parts of the program and it still shows tremendous value. And then in that Navy instance, they're using OASC as part of a larger system, but having everyone sort of take the same pre-assessment and providing them with a mechanism to improve their academic skills. It helps the program holistically, even if they're not having future sailors use every single aspect. Maybe they're taking the pre-assessment and they want them to take math and English, but they don't need them to worry about the science component. Still getting a lot of value there. So if all of this sounds intriguing to you, you may be asking yourself, okay, how can I get my base or installation started with OASC? We're gonna talk you through this. Next slide, please. Okay, so find an OASC champion. Hint, it might be you. In fact, it's probably going to be. The success stories that we have seen all require somebody to sort of take it upon themselves to get the program started. All right, next slide. So I encourage folks to discover the why. So what do your service members want, need? What is the real motivation? And from there, we can sort of craft the program to help meet the needs of the service members. So are they looking to earn tuition assistance or get that tuition assistance granted? As in the case of the Marine Corps, are they hoping to reclassify for a specific military job? Or are they looking to reduce the time and money needed to go to college? So as you guys are very, very familiar, what happens when a service member, maybe they haven't been, they're it's been, I don't know, 5, 6 years since they're out of high school and they are trying to get into community college. What happens if they're not ready? Anyone? You can put it in the chat. Yes, they have to take remedial courses. And sometimes those may or may not be paid for by the military. And then if you have to take a remedial course at community college, or even a 4-year institution, that's delaying the time that it takes for you to get your degree. So I like to remind service members that, you know, when they're taking this course, this is very much aligned to the standards that we have for, you know, across high schools across the country. So if you want to be college ready, this is a great refresher course, and we all need refreshers. You know, it's been a minute for all of us, right? And this can help service members reduce the time and money needed to pursue their college degree. So start with that why. I'm going to hold off on questions just for 1 second. So we go to the next slide. And then, you know, connect that why with the marketing, resources, and messaging available. And we've got you covered there. Next slide. We have, okay, that's not going to work. So that video is not going to work. Move to the next one. We have marketing materials available to you free of charge. You can order those and we'll send them to your base or installation. We have print pieces available for the course, just, you know, educational, inspirational posters. We also have a little app card, and there's a QR code on there. So if they want to take the course and on their phone, great. All they need to do is scan that QR code, and they'll be taken to either the App Store or the Google Play Store, where they can download the app for free. Again, so try to connect the motivation for your students with what this, you know, course can help them with. Next slide. Again, I mentioned the app. There's no excuses here. They can study this anytime, anywhere. There is an app that lets them take the course, you know, when they're on Wi-Fi, if they're off Wi-Fi. The way that it works is similar to, you know, Netflix. Like before you get on the plane and you don't have Wi-Fi, you download a couple shows onto your phone. This is the same sort of concept. So before service members go down range, we say download, then go down range. They can download the course in packets, and then basically they can use that on their personal device whenever they'd like, and they don't have to have access to Wi-Fi. Once they get back in range, they can, you know, select the Wi-Fi again, and everything will sync up. So it's wonderful. This is, you know, no excuses. Even if you don't have Wi-Fi, you can use this. Next slide. And then also on-demand tutoring. You will likely have service members that have been out of school for a long time, or maybe they were in school, but it was, you know, during COVID and they didn't get the instruction that they needed. We have live on-demand tutoring that service members can use free of charge. The average wait time to get a tutor is 32 seconds, which is almost, it's unbelievable. And then the average session length is usually about a little under an hour, which is also amazing. It shows that, you know, these tutors are really engaging with service members, really making sure that they understand the content. Every tutor gets rated after their session so that we can ensure we're, you know, providing the best quality tutors. So it's really an amazing program. They can also, they could submit a writing sample and they can get feedback on that. So if they, if they need some help with their writing skills, they can do that as well. Next slide. Okay, so but the biggest thing that we have to do is we have to get them registered, right? We can't, like, the program can't work its magic unless they're actually, getting onto the website to get registered. So have them register at dantes.petersons.com. It's free for all active service members. Again, you could also do that as well. I'm going to stop right here. I think we have a couple questions in the chat. And pardon me while I look over this.
Yeah, Elizabeth, I can take one
Yeah.
of those questions. Someone asked about what was the requirement, what part is the Marine Corps using for their TA? I copied the requirements in the chat there, but if you haven't met other academic skills requirements, you have to do OASC. The benefit is with completion, successful completion, then you get to use TA. And the limitation is none of the other requirements are met, then that individual could only take one course per academic term. They're making a concerted effort to make sure our service members are ready to enter a rigorous academic program before taking the risk of using TA and, for whatever reason, being unsuccessful, which can be extremely frustrating.
And I have a question here from Jennifer. She asks, if a service member takes the pre-assessment but only worked through modules pertaining to certain sections, e.g. the GT sections, can they still take the post-assessment? Yes, they can. We've designed this to be flexible, and we recognize that for some service members, the GT score that's their main motivation. And they don't really necessarily care about the assembling objects section of the exam. And so, yes, if they just want to do the math and English sections, they can, but those are the minimums in terms of they need to take 4 sections that pertain to actually, and the GT I know is 3, but they need to take all the math and English. If you don't want to take the assembling objects or the mechanics, you can leave those. Next slide, please. We have some great tools available on the Dantes site that show how to get folks started. How to use this tool actually shows a video like how to log on, where to go. So if you have a place on base where you can, where you're showing videos in a loop, you can put this up there. All this great stuff is available on the Dantes YouTube channel. Also available via Petersons. Next slide, please. And then also measure progress, right? So what's measured gets done, right? So register yourself as an educator in the system. It's that same URL, dantes.petersons.com. And then you can check into the system to monitor service member progress. We have things aligned so that ESOs and counselors can see the progress of the service members that pertain to them. So service members on your base or installation. Also, if you're National Guard, we have that set up by state. I realize that not every state has, the National Guard might be all by state. So you might need to see all of Arizona. We have those permissions set up so that you can see the people that you need to, and that you don't need to see the rest of the folks. There's also a great little training in there for educators so they can learn how to use the system. And so it basically teaches you how to pull records and what those records mean. Couple of questions, just real quick here. Oh, okay. 2 questions, and then I'll let Dante's talk about some great upcoming webinars that they have. One question was, does OASC send reminders about incomplete modules that still need to be completed? It does not send reminders about incomplete modules. It does send reminders if there is a 7-day gap between logging in. So if somebody has registered and they start the course and then they have been absent for 7 days, they do get a reminder that says, hey, come back, we miss you. But it's not related to modules specifically. And then Jennifer asks, what did you mean in your bullet point, 740 hours of tutoring? Is that a limit? That's a great question. I believe that was just a measurement of how many tutoring hours we'd had in 2023. So, and then Dr. Hardy asked, recent changes were made to the AFCT. Will OASC be updated to reflect those changes? And if so, when? Pearson's would be happy to update those. If anyone can enlighten us as to what those changes are, we would like to know. We have, our understanding is that the AFCT it's basically old ASVAB exams, and we have not seen any changes to the ASVAB in terms of the test or the norming. So Dr. Hardy, if you have any access to that, we would love to have it, and we would absolutely update things. And please feel free to contact me offline as well for any additional information. Erin, Emily, back to you.
Hi there, this is Erin, and I actually am putting in this graphic that you guys see here. I'll just let you know that College Board is doing these webinars, and they're specifically focused and targeting education counselors and academic facilities. So I do want to let you guys know that on that link down there at the bottom of that graphic, we are actually putting more information up on the counselor tools page, which is on the DANTES website. And I am putting that link into there we go, into the chat right now. So if you want more information and a actual link so that you can go and register for these webinars, I think you might want to do it. I'll be honest, before we even promoted these, Emily and I went and did listen to the CLEP and military webinar. And the nice thing about it is she'll answer your questions, again, just like today, right there on the spot when you have questions about maybe setting up for CLEP examinations, becoming a test center, questions like that for specifically for education counselors and the universities. So you've got that link there, and I know that I added that information in yesterday. So if you're looking for more information on the CLEP webinars, you can find the link there. And that's all I have. Emily, do you have anything you wanted to add?
Yes, Erin, thank you for including the group with that information. Just as a reminder, all of our webinars are listed on the DANTES website. So we'll continue to share that each month. I'm going to pass it back to Mariba to highlight a little information on the March Cooter Journey session. Mariba, over to you.
Yes, and thank you so much, Emily. First of all, let's give Miss Elizabeth a hand clap for that exceptional briefing. We appreciate you so much. And we want to thank all of our participants for joining us today. We know that everyone is busy, and to reassure you that even if after this session is over, if you have questions, we will be here for you. And we also ask that you come back and join us next month for some exceptional DANTES training opportunities. We have the CLEP, as they've already mentioned, and the Cooter Journey. The Cooter Journey, we will we'll be going through a training session that will allow us to better engage with our service members. We'll have some questions to encourage the ways in which you present the information, and questions that will allow you to ask the right questions to get the information you need from the service members.